Okay. Hopefully you guys can hear what's going on. Maybe I should turn off the music. Oh, computers.
Computer is taking forever.
That was some Dropkick Murphys. Getting us. Oh, did you bring some cookies?
For me.
Girl, do I look like?
You're gonna be talking.
Oh.
You can have one after.
Okay. That's my reward. Okay. Let's see. Just making sure everything is working. Yeah, got my got Nickelback all queued up, ready to go, guys. Oh no, what is that? Error establishing database connection?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh. Is anybody else having problems connecting? That's not good at all. Let me check it on my phone. We'll get started in a minute, folks. Nicole's just having... Whoa, the guild site is down.
Wonderful. John.
John, where are you? The weird thing is, though, some people are still connected, so they're there. Hey, so if you're on the site, do not refresh the page.
Yeah, no.
But it looks like anyone who's trying to make a new connection to the site isn't able to.
How do I get to the live stream?
Well, hang on. John's looking at it. Should I just get started with the news segment?
Well, I guess if you're...
The news segment's first, then I'm going to do the scrapers.
I need to be able to see people talking.
Yeah, that's true. But you could find it on our offcuts page. Since you're an admin, it's just an unlisted offcuts video. All right, I'm going to give it just a couple of seconds, guys, because hopefully John can take a look at this.
Is that a cookie?
No, not at the moment.
2 cookies. Creator Studio.
No. Look, I had DDoS long ago. I don't need any more of that crap.
God.
What a nightmare that was.
Live
Okay,
stream.
well, it looks like there's enough people that I think I could at least get started.
You can wait for me.
I don't want to delay too much.
Where is it?
Go to live events.
Or live streaming?
Yeah, live streaming. Go to events, and there it should be there.
There it is.
There it is. Fancy scraper burnishers. Long ago. Okay, so hey, look at that pause on your face. That's
wonderful.
Good. Just to give you a heads up, both Nicole and I are still suffering from wonderful head colds.
You're worse than me.
Yeah, you'll hear the nasally stuff. I'm just, I'm gonna make it happen. I don't care. I'm crazy. So today we're going to be talking about Burnishers, and I'll get into more details on that in a little bit. But first, I just want to go through a little bit of guild news. And anyone who is new to the guild, who may have, maybe this is your first guild meeting.
There's a lot of new first guild
Maybe you're sitting at the front page seeing error establishing database connection, and you're like, WTF, yo.
I'm putting it in the guild Facebook group for anybody that's having problems.
So if you can communicate with John, I'm not going to be able to answer him at this point. All right, so just a couple bits of news items, and hopefully we'll fix everything. So by the time the news is done, everyone will be able to catch the scraper issue. So card scrapers are back in stock. You guys might remember these. We partnered with DFM Toolworks to make these sweet little card scrapers. Now, this is what it looks like after you have honed it. Okay, it's got that blue coating on there. This is normal. This is what you expect to see. But it looks like crap, kind of, at this stage. But that's just the way it is. But they do have the Wood Whisperer logo on there, as well as DFM's contact information there. And what makes these special is they're pretty much the thickest card scraper in this format that you're going to find. There might be some obscure manufacturer that makes one this thick, but that's really thick. I like my card scrapers thick. So if you want to get this, they are now back in stock until you guys buy them all up again, and then we have to have more made. But they are currently available on the Wood Whisperer Guild site Just go to the store. I believe if you go to extras, you'll see them there. But don't click anything right now because I think the site's still.
No, somebody says it's back up.
It's back up?
I'll test it right now.
That would be good.
Just keep going.
All right, so next thing on my list. Oh, the Oneida discount.
Yeah, and the Eagle America discount.
And Eagle America. So we're always trying to get these discounts to not only continue, but to improve if we can. So the big news is, so the Eagle America one is just continuing.
Yeah, 10%. I think free Super Saver shipping until the end of June now.
Okay, cool. And then the Oneida one, they contacted us and said, look, we're trying something a little bit different this year. We're not going to put many sales on throughout the year. So we want what we're doing with you to be a fairly exclusive deal. So they not only increased from 5% to 10% off. The fact is you're probably not going to be able to get any sales from them directly. So if you're into getting a new dust collector, a Cyclone, or even the small separator unit, those are going to be at 10% off. So it's a pretty good discount, but I want to make sure everybody knows. What?
Somebody asked what the difference, the thickness between ours and I think Lee-Nielsen's.
Yeah, it's on the website. This is, let's see.
Because ours is 0.05.
0.05 inches thick.
And usually they're like 0.32.
They can range because a lot of times with card scrapers, sometimes you want more flexibility. This one is pretty average. This is Lee-Nielsen's, right? You see there's not a whole lot of flex, but I do have a couple up here that are really, oopsie. Excuse me. Look at this one. Woo.
Oh, wow.
Right? Super flexible. Yeah. And flexibility is not a bad thing. It's just, it depends on what you want. But I think in terms of just scraping flat surfaces to prep for finishing, I find that I just get more durability and I have an easier time maintaining my edge and sharpening on a unit like this that's got more meat to it.
Dan wants to know.
I call him Lil Chunk.
Lil Chunk. Dan wants to know how was it working with DFW tools? I'm thinking about picking up a few of their squares.
Well, I mean, the capacity with which I worked with them
was this card scrapers,
is
right?
to have him make some scrapers for me.
And he's a small business.
Yeah, it's a small business, just
one
one dude and some machines. So something I don't mind throwing some support at. That's the kind of people we love to do business with. So good stuff. Okay, Oneida discount. Oh, the challenge coins.
Yeah.
So the 2019 challenge coins in the guild are in. If you're into that sort of thing.
If you've already picked one up in a loot bag or back order,
they're coming.
They're coming your way. They actually look really cool.
Yeah, they did come out really nice.
Because they have the new logo on them.
Yeah, they got the new logo, and they actually have. You might get confused at first. It's got the bench on it, the workbench. But that's because one of the projects this year is the under cabinet storage for the workbench. Yeah. So that's what we thought would be the our favorite project of the year.
Yeah. Tyler had a quick question. I was one of the fools that didn't read the instructions during the
book
pre-order and bought the scraper at the same time. Anything special I need to do, or just be patient?
It's called be patient, my friend. I hate to say it, but that was part of the fine print, and you just have to wait. We would love to be able to ship things out, but it will really confuse the system if we start shipping partial things and also cost more in shipping. So, okay. And last thing, I just wanted to make sure everybody knows Ashley's turning video is due. Remember, this one was delayed. First time we had a delay like that, but it had to be done. But her video series starts in February. I have edited a lot of the footage, most of the footage. It's fantastic. I'm so proud of this because she's so good. She's great on camera. She knows her stuff. She's at the top of her game. And we captured it in a way that I don't think anyone really has before in the turning world. And it's just absolutely fantastic. So if you even think you might have a slight amount of interest in getting into wood turning, or you're just learning, you want to learn the push cut method, you want to see how she does things, you've got to check it out. This is going to be a killer series. And I'm going to drop a little hint. The price might be going up. Yeah. After I've done the editing and I've seen just how much information is in this series, I'm pretty convinced that it needs to be priced higher, just to be fair to Ashley and just the amount of content that's in there. So definitely get on that if you're interested.
Dimitri said he had a question about the Oneida discount. He said the Facebook post said, any dust collector over $1,000. Was it meant to say $100? No, it's $1,000. That's
Well, they're looking for you to buy their big units, the Cyclones.
The Dust Gorilla.
Yeah, not their smaller, you know, hobbyist level stuff, I guess. I'm just looking at the website one more time here on my
I wouldn't worry about it.
cellular connection. It's very upsetting.
I know.
I mean, I'm glad the people who are here are seeing this, but it's really unnerving to know that our website is down.
And I put it in the whatchamacallit, and people are watching.
And you're communicating with John?
Yeah. Well, he hasn't communicated to me. But...
Okay, we'll text him so he stops texting me.
Okay.
Excuse me. All right, so that's it for the news. I'll probably chop that part of the video out and put that on the news section of the website.
Cool.
And then we could start the good stuff. This is what I'm excited about. So here's the reason why I got into this. You guys know sharpening scrapers is one of those things that's like once you get it, it's fantastic. But until then, it might be the thing that makes you want to hang up your shop apron and take up knitting, because it can be frustrating if you just cannot roll that burr properly. You can't get the results that you see everybody else get, and it's so frustrating. So they do make things that make the sharpening and the burnishing process of a card scraper easier, supposedly. So what was interesting, in the Facebook Guild group, a number of people in the past few weeks started talking about some of these helpers, the Burnisher helpers. And a few different people, I think, I can't remember who started the one on Veritas. I think maybe Nathan started the one on this, Timberline, this guy, and then someone else started a post on a Veritas one, and suddenly all these guild members are going out and buying this thing, and I'm like, you know what, I want to test it out. I'd like to see for myself. Does it make it that much easier? Is this something I could, recommend for people? I will say though, all the people who were getting into this were really posting good results. They actually, for the first time, were getting shavings, and they've never been able to get shavings before. So we'll get into these two products in a second. First, I'm going to mess with a tangle of wires here. Look at this. Nothing says 2019 like a corded connection. All right, so let's move this over. I'm gonna have to go and move the camera a couple of times here, so bear with me. But I want to show you guys what to expect with scrapers.
Should I move my stuff?
No, you're fine.
And I will be pulling questions as Mark is doing his demo, and when there's a stopping point, then I'll drop a question.
Drop it like it's hot. Okay, where is my sharpener? Okay, so if you are sharpening a scraper, and this, I think you'll like this. This actually is a scraper that is not sharpened on one side, but sharpened on the other. So we should see a dramatic difference between the way these two surfaces hit the wood. So I will do a little bit of scraping here.
Oh, that makes my ears hurt.
Oh, well, Nicole, this isn't even the worst of it.
It makes my teeth hurt too.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys can make that out, but it's just dust. So if that's the kind of action you have on your scraper, you may be a good candidate for what we're about to show you. Let me show you what this should look like. This is one that I sharpened up earlier. This is a no-name scraper, no fancy brand. You don't need a fancy brand. While I really would like you to buy our scraper, you certainly don't need a fancy scraper. So this is what happens when you actually have a burr. First of all, it's catching, right? I'm putting pressure forward and it's stopping my action because that little hook that's on there is grabbing the wood. It's a good sign, right? So if I flex it a little bit and I'm gonna keep it at an angle, I don't know exactly what the angle is. I'm gonna rotate it a little bit to find the angle. See, I'm not catching. And then once I rotate to this point, it's a little bit more than a 45. Pretty steep on this particular one. But now I do have it. Okay, so this stuff, these fine little shavings, you're more like microplaning at this point than scraping. Okay, and that's what you want. That's ideal. And you can see all my pencil lines are going away very quickly. If you have milling marks on your boards from the milling process, they will go away very quickly. And instead of making a bunch of dust and firing up your sander, you're just blowing through this with some shavings. Easier to clean up, tends to be a little bit faster, And you get from a machine surface to a surface that, if you want to sand it at all, you know, you're looking at sanding maybe 220, 320 and calling it a day. So that is what you should expect. All right. So let's look at these two different tools, and let's take a look as well at a traditional burnisher. Excuse me. So in a traditional burnisher, you basically have a steel rod. By the way, this is not something you want to do too much in a video. You'll get comments when you do things like this. Took Nicole a while to catch what's happening here. So that basically this rod is hardened to a level that makes it harder than the card scraper. So that when we want to roll the burr, as they say, on a card scraper, you're basically moving the metal on the edge. You're moving it around to create a hook. So you need a metal that's actually harder than the metal in the scraper. And that's why we have a particular, you know, tool itself called a burnisher that's kind of dedicated to this task. I've seen people use screwdrivers for this. Just the shaft of a screwdriver can work. But ultimately, having a dedicated burnisher, really not a bad idea. I highly recommend it. So what makes this tricky is when you are going through the burnishing process, there's a couple different motions, and those motions all have to happen at different angles, right? So as you do that, there's just a lot of room for error. And I think that's what gets people caught up. They get stuck because maybe they're just a degree or two off, you know? And in reality, I'm gonna tell you, I don't think that the degree matters so much as the amount of pressure and being consistent. So what these do is they help you lock in that angle. So when you're trying to decide, okay, am I just off from flat just a little bit? Okay, I need to do this 3 times. Am I gonna get it the same every time? Probably not. But if I use one of these, I got a much better shot at having everything be perfect each and every time that I do this operation, okay? And this guy goes like that. So I'm gonna take one of these scrapers.
Can I ask you a question while you're doing that?
Yeah, I'm gonna set up on the vise side.
John Ponto, any idea what angle you have that scraper honed to?
What angle?
Yeah.
90 degrees? Is that a trick question?
I don't know.
So here's the other thing. I'm not gonna go over the full sharpening process on a scraper. What I'm gonna assume here is that you have honed your scraper edges to 90 degrees. That means taking it to, you know, you could start with a file, but that's just the start of it. That's just the shaping. Is that what that one
video on our free site does?
We've got a couple videos on it, yeah. William Ming has a video that I filmed him, and then I have a video that I did years ago. It's pretty old. Kermoda's got a video. Everybody who has a woodworking YouTube channel probably has a scraper sharpening video. But the most important thing is that you hone this edge to be 90 degrees to the face. All right, so you want to make sure it's nice and smooth. Treat it like it's a chisel. Hone it as much as you want. I mean, don't go nuts with it, but it's not insane to take this to 1,000 grit, to 5,000 grit. You know, the better you make that edge and that surface, the better the burr comes out and the longer it lasts. So I'm going to assume you've done that, and we now have a 90-degree surface that's ready to go. I got to move again.
While you're moving, the Wood Lab says, any thoughts / experience with the Veritas burnisher?
That's
the
what I have
one
right there.
that has the irregular shape as opposed to the cylindrical.
Cylindrical?
Cylindrical.
So I think he's talking about the tri-burnisher or something they call it. No, I don't have any experience with it, but I have a feeling it's going to, you know, have some of the similar problems that these other ones have. It's about body English and angles, which is not always easy to pull off.
John just clarified, I was referring to the angle of the burr. The Veritas has adjustable angles.
Oh, okay, well, we'll get to that.
Hold your horses, John.
Come on, John. Settle down already, would you? And I'm sorry, setting this thing up and moving the camera is actually, it's kind of difficult. So bear with me.
Why are you? Benjamin wants to know what's the price difference between the burnisher versus the jigs.
Great question.
Do you have that on there?
Yeah, regular burnisher. Wait, let me answer that when I'm actually on camera, so there's something interesting to see.
Like your face?
Well, my face is. It is interesting. A lot of people, they look at it and they're like, "How did it get this way?" So I mean, I see your logic there, Nicole.
I do too.
I'm with you. All right, so here is a regular burnisher. you know, something like this is going to run anywhere from 20 bucks to 27 bucks. Not cheap, right?
What did you say? 20 bucks?
20 to 27 bucks, depending on the brand. And just for this
stick.
old school, you know, metal piece of a stick of metal and a handle.
Stick of metal.
All right, this guy, this is the Timberline Scraper Burnisher. This is going to be 30 bucks, $29.98, I believe, on Amazon. Okay, and then you've got the Veritas guy, variable burnisher, is 39 bucks. So you could pay almost up to $30 for a standard burnisher. It's not much more to get one of these. You know, the Timberline one being the cheapest, and then for 10 bucks more you can get this guy, which does a little more hand holding for you. But you know, that's what we're here to discover. Is it worth that 10 extra bucks to have plastic in this little dial? I don't know. Actually, I do know, but I'm not going to tell you yet. All right, let's do a little bit of a experimentation here. So I'll start with, what do you want to start with, Nicole? The Veritas or the Timberline?
Timberline.
The Timberline
I
is.
don't know why. I just timber.
So,
timber.
The Timberline acts a little bit more like a traditional scraper, right? You've got the thing exposed here. You can just imagine how you're going to run this across the surface. You have two different ways to hold it. I'll show you that in a second. But this one, in my experience in using it, my extensive experience of the last 3 hours using this, has shown me that this one is more satisfying to people who are actually kind of comfortable using a traditional burnisher. The format of the Veritas is very different, and it's not something, you know, that immediately comes naturally to you. There's a little bit of a learning curve. Okay, so we'll sharpen this first one here. If anyone needs to remind me later, it's the top side of the TWW that I'm working on right now, because I might forget. So the way this guy works, you've got an angle on the top here, right? And that angle is what's going to go up against our scraper, like so. Oops. That's a little too close. There we go. So what I'm going to do is draw this guy along the surface. You want to keep it parallel to the plane of the scraper, and you're going to go along like this. Essentially what we're doing here, this is the same step that you probably have seen many people do, where it's almost parallel. You just go off by a degree, and you're drawing the steel out from the edge. You're basically trying to get it to flow out a little bit. That's the first step in this process. All right, so if you just draw it along this way, that should do the trick. Let me put a little bit of oil on here. It's always good, metal to metal, to lube up. Nicole. It's a family show. All right, so I'm going to just basically draw back like this. And they say like, I don't know, 2, maybe 3. Hey, let's go 4. You really don't want to overdo it because you can make the metal a little bit too brittle by overworking it. But I'll tell you what, both of these tools, there's nuance here, and you need to try this and practice several times before you can really get your best results out of it. So that's what I found. You've got to decide with your scraper, you've got to look at, you know, the way you're handling the tool. Practice a few times because experience is going to be the best thing with these things. So I think that's probably good. Let me move around just a little bit more here. Okay. Yeah, top side. All right, so now on both of these edges, we should have the material kind of pushed out from the edge. So if we rotate this, I keep thinking I'm going to be on my vise, so I'm aiming the camera in the wrong place. There's a little slot in here, and check out what happens. You see the angle of that little rod there? As we go in, the angle is more severe, and I take it back about here, I'm still actually holding it at a slight angle. Okay, whatever that angle, I don't know, like 7 degrees, 10 degrees, it's like in that ballpark. But we're going to put our thumb right behind the burnishing rod and do the same thing, just pulling back on that edge like this. My leg vise is in the way. Okay, so I got the card in the slot. And here's the thing, you're not going to know if you're there until you actually run your hand across the edge and feel it. And when you feel a little bit of burr, like something catching on your finger, that's when you know you've got it.
Robert wants to know, do you have to use a lot of pressure?
Pressure is the thing that experience is going to help you determine. I always read in these instruction manuals, and they're like, it really doesn't require that much pressure. It's a lot less pressure than you would think. And I'm like, you know what? I actually find it to be a lot more pressure than I would think.
Yeah.
So I think it's all relative. If I hit my knuckle on that thing one more time.
But a couple of people have said, my knuckles.
Yeah,
I'm
like such a dummy over here. I'm trying to be slick with the way I'm operating the camera, but not paying attention to where my hands actually are. Okay, so that's really all there is to it. I will tell you, for folks who have our scraper, this guy is actually not as easy to burnish. The thinner scrapers will burnish a little bit easier, which is part of the reason why you need more pressure to do this. So I don't feel like I actually have enough of a burr on here. I'm going to redo this part.
As you're doing that, Josh Jones says, as someone who's never used a burnisher jig, which would you recommend?
That's what we're here to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to help you decide, should you use one at all? And if you are going to use one, which one is better? But I'm also showing you how it's not as dead simple as they make it out to be.
Not as cut and dry.
Yeah, I mean, you have to get to know it. And I think because I was being a little bit more gentle, because I was fighting my stupid leg vice, I was not putting enough pressure. And this is part of what I was saying, is that you actually need more pressure than I think these instruction manuals indicate.
Robert says, could you use either of these burnisher jigs effectively on curved and gooseneck scrapers?
I don't believe so.
And then
you might be able to use this, the Timberline. You might be able to get away with that on something curved.
Yeah.
Right, because you kind of have access to go around. Not sure you're going to be able to do anything with this guy. All right, let's see if I can get the other side a little bit better. Sorry. This was what I've been doing all day, is trying to get the nuance down between all these scrapers. Okay. And they also recommend always pulling and not pushing. If you push, there's more of a chance you could slip and go forward and cut yourself.
Ew.
If you pull back, there's less of a chance of that happening.
That would be scary.
Okay. All right, so we got a little bit of an edge going here. Let's see if I can even take a shaving. Quiet, Nicole. I'm doing a live show here. All right, so serviceable, absolutely serviceable. But you see, even though I had some experience with this guy today, I took a break for dinner, came back, and lost my muscle memory that told me how much pressure I need to apply with that, right? So let's take the same exact scraper, and let's go ahead and try the Veritas on the bottom side. And like I said, this is a little bit easier on smaller scrapers, or thinner scrapers.
Stratus Prime says, are these burnishers handy for anything besides scrapers, other kinds of blades? Kitchen knives, somebody said?
I guess if you have like a kitchen knife that you can kind of hone the blade instead of totally resharpening it, maybe.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know. I only use them for that. Okay, so this is the Veritas version. The idea with the Veritas is, in this guy, how we were turning this to achieve different angles. This guy is going to do that with a little dial. And that dial has different settings on there for different degrees. So your first pass is going to be right on the edge, and that's 0. That's flat. So as far as this guy's concerned, it's completely perpendicular to the orientation of the scraper. All right, so if I loosen the little thumb lock, then I could turn this guy to up to 15 degrees in either direction. What I found from my usage, what I think produces a nice cutting burr, is somewhere between 5 and 10, somewhere like 7, 7.5, 8, ballpark. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right, but we're going to start at 0, as per the instructions. So with this guy in a vise, now here's immediately the first difference. Okay, this guy, we now have vertical. When we were doing the other one, we had to go flat. So when we drew out the material on this edge the other way, we were drawing it out on the flat, pulling it like this, and then we folded it back over to create the hook. What's different about the way that the Veritas works, we're just working on the edge the entire time. So that drawing out of material is only happening on this edge first. This is interesting. I actually, when I first saw that, started to wonder, is this thing actually going to work that well? Because I'm so used to drawing out from the flat, right? But it actually did work. Okay, so they actually recommend for this that you, again, work backwards. You see you've got this little area where you could insert a scraper like this. If you pull back, you hear that? That's right about in this area here is where the actual burnisher rod is. So you want to find that on the corner and then just pull back. Now, they do say to use one hand, and it is comfortably held like this. But again, I find that the pressure, and to get consistent pressure, I like to use two hands for this. I found that that gave me the best results. So I am going to put quite a bit of pressure, draw back. A little bit of honing oil. If you ever feel a scrapey, grindy feel when you're doing this, you absolutely want to lubricate.
Oh, somebody asked what oil. Where'd it go? Nate said, is there a specific type of oil you recommend using?
I have Smith's honing oil that I bought from Lowe's probably in 2004. Because I was like, I've got to have a honing oil, right?
Honing oil.
Yeah, so that's that. All right, so I'm going to do one more. So that was, that was what, 4? So theoretically, what's happened here is, where's my other one? This guy. Our burnishing rod has gone flat across the surface and pushed steel out a little bit, like that.
So what exactly is honing oil?
Oil.
What, like?
It's just oil.
There's all kinds of oils.
Any oil would really work.
Yeah, like kitchen oil?
Sure. But I mean, let's not get specific.
I know.
So you want to know what kind of oil it is? Look up Smith's honing oil. It's probably an oil that's really good for honing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is change the angle now. I'm going to go to that 7, what did I say, like 7.5, 8, on up to 10, whatever you want. Lock it in. So now this guy should be tilted this way slightly. I'm going to do the same exact thing. Find the starting point, 2 hands, drag back.
A lot of people are saying 3-in-1 oil works good.
Yeah, you don't really need crazy special oil. That's why I made the joke that I bought this stuff how long ago?
Yeah.
I'm still not getting the burr that I want. And I will tell you, I had a harder time getting the Veritas to produce my burr and get this. I found the learning curve for this was steeper than the Timberline.
Interesting.
But again, I'm very comfortable with a traditional burnisher, and I think that has something to do with it. Let's see if the other side comes out any better. One, 2. Oh, by the way, you saw me just turn the scraper around. Cool thing about this is you don't really need to do that. You could just keep it in the original orientation and switch to the other side of 0. And you don't have to actually move the scraper at all.
And Veritas is Lee Valley?
Lee Valley, yeah.
So anything Veritas, they get a student discount on, right?
No.
No?
That's Lee Nielsen.
Oh, Lee Valley. Oh.
Yeah, we just had that conversation.
I know. Lee Nielsen.
Yep.
Dang it.
Lee Valley doesn't want to give us a discount.
Yeah.
All right, so this I am not as happy with. I can tell you right now, we might be able to get a little bit of scraping happening there. Whoops. I'm doing this in the wrong direction on my workbench, so in case you're wondering.
Why is this happening to him?
This Rubo sucks. All right, so I got a little bit of an edge, but I was not able to get as good of an edge with the Veritas. That is not the fault of the tool. That's just my personal learning curve with it. I was able to get, where's that one that I did earlier? Is it the, forget, hold on. This one. This one, thinner scraper, I did with the Veritas earlier, and that's the one that I started with that was giving me these bad boys. All right, so it's not as clear cut as some of these devices may make it seem. So it is going to work, but both of these are going to have their learning curve. If you are somewhat comfortable with the concept of burnishing, I don't think you need your hand held quite this much. But if you have a lot of thinner scrapers, you get this guy set, you get used to using it, you're probably going to sharpen your scrapers more, because when you have a dull scraper, okay, let's actually use the other side. So this one was sharpened, this side is still unsharpened. Let's do the Veritas on a thinner blade, which should not require as much manual power.
Gary even just said, does the Veritas work better on the thinner scraper?
I believe it does, because the thinner scraper I find to be easier to burnish.
Yeah.
Easier to burnish, I should say, with these devices.
Gotcha.
It's actually hard to get the same amount of pressure with these things as I get with this. I can get way more pressure. I get it so much pressure that I can actually flex the card while I'm doing it. And that's actually what usually happens. So again, learning curve for me. Okay, now let's do an angle. Let's go to a little bit on that side.
David wants to know if the Veritas is going to make two burrs at the same time.
Nope, just one. So you see what I'm doing right now is it's angled to one side. I got a little bit. Let me do a little more. Now I'm going to change it to the other side of 0. And we'll do the other side.
Would Stuart wants to know, would a carving knife steel with small grooves work as a burnisher?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It always depends on the hardness of the steel. Okay, so thinner scraper. Don't have to put as much pressure or work the surface as hard. Look at that. If you see me struggle, that's because I'm catching. It's a good thing. And once you find the sweet spot, you should be able to rock and roll. Boy, a workbench that's used properly is a nice thing.
Why'd you get a clamp?
Because it's all the way over there. But look at that. That's a nice edge. Look at that. Look at that, Nicole. Ah, so nice. So again, bit of a learning curve there. I'm going to draw the camera back a little bit. I could definitely field any questions, but let me kind of summarize a little bit. So I think I'll just kind of repeat my recommendation that if you have experience with and are fairly comfortable with a traditional burnisher, the Timberline, the less expensive one, is probably going to work better in the sense that you'll get the hang of it faster because it's very similar to what you're used to doing. The Veritas is just a different beast. And if you have had no luck sharpening scrapers and it has eluded you to this point, you may consider something like this because this is it's a bit of a paradigm shift in how you do things. Bless you. From my experience, and I must have sharpened maybe 30 times today in experimenting with these, I feel like this would be the one that I would use most often. If I have my thin scrapers though, I probably would go with the Veritas because it's quick, it's easy, it's actually not as labor intensive. I like the fact that I could use both hands to put pressure and control the motion. This guy, you're still using like a regular burnisher, one-handed, the other hand is holding the scraper. So this one I think takes a little bit less out of you. Maybe you have arthritis in your hands or you have problems gripping. This is the one that's going to require less of your hands, the Veritas. Right? So it's a give and take. I don't think there is a, which one is best in this situation. It's going to definitely depend on what you're doing, how you're doing it, your hands, and what your preferences are. I can tell you that I got serviceable edges out of both of these tools. And I can also tell you I will probably not be using this guy anymore. That's the big thing. As someone who has exclusively used the traditional burnisher up to this point, am I going to get rid of this for the sake of these? Probably, because I'll tell you, the one thing is, even though I have that sort of muscle memory, there are times where I'll sharpen my scrapers, and I'll go along, and then I'll feel, or I'll go to sharpen, and I've got a really, really nice edge right here in the middle, but I miss the outside edge. That's inconsistency on my part. I'm just either not applying a pressure the correct way, or I'm varying my angle slightly. So I think when you're using these things at fixed angles, your burrs are more consistent, and consistency is going to give you an edge that's going to last longer. So I think as I get used to these, I'm just going to wind up, sharpening a lot more frequently, and I'm going to have my scrapers ready to go. The other cool thing about this, most edges can be reworked. A lot of people say, well, what happens when it dulls? Well, when it dulls, you just repeat the process. So that little bit of steel that's on that edge, you can bring it back out, so depending on which one you're using. So you got a little burr that's kind of been worn off. You could run this guy over there again, just repeat that honing process, do the angle, repeat that process, and you should be able to get 3, 4, maybe even up to 5 times out of it. It might not ever work as well as the very first time, but you could still get extended life out of it.
A lot of people in the chat room were saying, I've never been able to get a card scraper to scrape in properly.
Okay, so let me also mention this. If you have never been able to get a shaving, this is not going to solve everything for you, because this is only the second half of the process. Now, I've done videos in the past on scraper sharpening, but maybe we can do an updated one.
Yeah.
Because someone said that Cremona's video was better, and I'm kind of bugged by it. So I sort of feel the need to do a new one, because I ain't gonna have that. No, seriously though, I have changed a few things. I've tried to simplify a few things with the way that I sharpen now, that it might be worthwhile to do it. But I can't overemphasize how important it is that you get a nice square edge. You should be able to hold this up, and this is why I like our card scrapers, because it's much easier to visualize what's happening on that edge with a thick scraper than a little teeny tiny one.
And Aaron just asked, can you explain why you went with a thicker metal on your scraper if the thinner ones are easier to use and sharpen? How does the thick one
I don't find them easier to use, I find them easier to sharpen.
Okay.
Okay. Now, terminology. Easier to burnish, right? I find the thin ones easier to burnish, not easier to sharpen.
Gotcha.
Okay. When I say sharpen, I'm talking about the honing process. So when I go to square this guy up and I'm at my sharpening stones, almost treating this like it's a plane blade or a chisel blade, sharpening this guy and honing that 90-degree edge, much easier on a thicker sheet stock like this. All right, and the way that I do it, I use a little block that holds it 90 degrees. It's just more reference surface, so it's easier to see what's going on, and I find it easier to sharpen. These guys, I don't know whether it's the type of steel, and these are fairly new to me too. How long have I had these from DFM? Not very long.
No.
Just within the last year. Whether it's the steel it's made out of that's a little bit harder to push that steel around with the burnisher, or just the sheer fact that it's thicker, right? Something is causing it to be a little bit harder, and it just means a little bit more manpower has to go into the burnishing process to get that edge to be effective. So once they're both, the burr is rolled and ready to go, they're both going to perform very well, but they perform differently. The more flexible scraper allows you to really get in deep into areas. It also tends to create more of a scalloped surface, because in order to scrape, you're flexing it. And what's flex do? Creates a curve. Okay, so it's kind of like a cambered blade in a plane. This guy, you don't flex it very much at all. So if I'm doing a tabletop, I actually want a scraper that is not going to flex very much. I just want to clean up the surface, keep it nice and flat. I don't want to see scallop marks or anything. I don't want dips and valleys. We're just talking slight amounts anyway, but still, we're being picky. I don't want that stuff. I actually want a scraper that's going to give me an edge that will hold up better, last longer, and give me a nice flat, even surface. If you are a puller, right? Most people are pushing a card scraper, but there are times when you need to pull. I like to have a less flexible scraper on the pull stroke, and I just find that it gives me a nice, even surface when I'm in a situation that I have to pull, as opposed to a flexible one, which I just find it feels awkward to pull that backwards. So they both have their advantages and disadvantages, but if I can only have one scraper, for my purposes, it's going to be a real thick one. And I'll tell you the history behind this. The reason I like this is what David Marks had in his shop. He had really, I don't know where he got them. He said something about like ice skates. So like material that was used for ice skates or something like that. I don't ice skate, I don't know. I do slip on ice though, like a pro. So I remember when I was in his shop, his card scrapers were super thick, and then I went home and ordered some, and I'm like, what is this thing? It's like paper thin compared to his, and that's because he just had thicker stock. And since then, I've just always wanted my card scrapers thicker than what most companies make. So
Logan
that's why we have them.
wants to know if the card scraper comes sharpened, ready to go.
Never.
No.
Card scrapers will not come sharpened. Most of the time, they will come filed. Okay, I shouldn't say never because I haven't tested every card scraper out there. Maybe some company does it for you. Most of them will just file the edge, including ours. Ours is filed. It is not honed. And I believe it's even filed. I don't know how he does it, JT. I don't know how he actually does the edge, but I imagine it's by hand, right? So if he's doing this by hand, that edge is not going to be perfect, but it's going to be better than it was when it was like cut out. So it'll be pre-filed. You need to hone that edge to get that nice 90-degree perfect meeting of two corners.
What is that? A Veritas? What's it
Veritas variable burnisher.
called? Burnisher. I was looking at honing.
So I do think, whether you have trouble with the burnishing process or not, I just said instead of or. I think these are a good investment. I mean, $40 and $30. Pick one. They both work really well. What I'm going to do is try to work with the Veritas more because I want this thing to work better. I feel like if I can get the hang of it and get my pressure just right, this is the one that I think I would reach for because it's just not as labor intensive to use. It's got a dial on it. Who doesn't want a dial?
What's
right?
the other one called?
They're right there.
Timberline.
You know, it's a cool little device. It's a neat little gadget. And I wouldn't really say it's gimmicky. I mean, it does what it's supposed to do, but there is a little bit of a learning curve with this one. Definitely more of a learning curve than I had with this.
Oh, it's on Amazon.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, look at that.
I'll tell you my concern with this one, though. It's made out of wood, and you are constantly rubbing this thing up against metal surfaces. And I do have my concerns over time as to how well this is going to hold up. That's just, from experience with wood tools, I haven't seen any significant damage to it yet, but I've only been using it for a day, so that's all the input I have on that. But it is made out of wood, and we're rubbing it up against sharp metal. Eventually, it's going to groove it and possibly cause some problems. So that is something to think about.
All right. So somebody asked me to put the links in the chat, so I've already put the Veritas burnisher in, and here is the Amazon. And I'll put the Timberline in our store as well, just for easy reference.
Sounds good.
So underneath, Mark recommends. Let's see, what else? There's what's the regular burnisher? Just the stick thingy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you mean as in non-variable?
Yeah. Well, you got the regular burnisher, and that's that stick
That's
thingy,
this
right?
thing, yeah. Crown makes them. JT makes one, actually, from DFM.
Oh, DFM burnisher. Hey, look at that.
Yeah, he makes one. Probably in the same
24
price
bucks?
range. Yeah, 20 to $30 these things usually are going to cost.
I'll add that to Mark recommends as well.
So this was cool because, a lot of times there's, banter and chatter that goes on in the Facebook group, and especially when it's like product related stuff. It's fun to be able. These weren't too expensive, so I'm like, just buy them both and see
Check
what
'em out.
I'll see what I can see.
Well, I've even in my viewing of social media, I've seen the Veritas one. Like, I can't believe I got these results. And
Right. But I do caution anyone, because I know a lot of the people who were posting about this had really good luck right away, and they were getting great results. And that is not always going to happen, depending on your hands, depending on the condition of your scraper that you're sharpening, may not always occur. So just be aware of that. I don't want you to think that this is like a cure-all for every scraper woe that's out there. But it does help if you understand what's actually happening. So what I'm going to do over time, I really want to just evaluate how much of a difference it makes when that first step is happening like this to draw out the steel versus like this to draw out the steel. My gut tells me, like with this guy, I can get a really strong hook on these with less effort because of the leverage I'm able to get with this tool. This guy is, I'm still getting used to it, but shorter handle, shorter little, nubby burnishing rod on there. I'm able to get a little bit better of an edge, and then this one is producing the least effective edge so far. But again, could just be the way I'm using it, and I got to get more time with it. Those are my initial results that I had with these.
Nate says, what's your experience suggestion on using a card or a scraper holder versus flexing with your thumb when using card scrapers on a surface?
I've never really used scraper holders. So if you're wondering what that is, it's basically, I wonder if I have anything comparable. I mean, if you look at the way a number 80 cabinet scraper works, essentially a scraper holder, it's got a scraper that's pinched in there, and then it's got a thumb screw in the back. That thumb screw flexes the blade. So the scraper holder that he's talking about is, I think Veritas actually makes it. Is that hole not big enough? What's going on here? There we go. It will hold the scraper and has that little thing in the screw in the back that you can dial in the flex. And I guess the idea is it's less fatiguing on your hands, and you could lock the scraper in. Like I said, I've never used one. They seem like they could be handy. But one thing I find with scrapers is it's kind of, it's not like, it's something you need to pay attention to. There's a lot of tactile feedback that happens when you're scraping. And sometimes if you detach yourself with a holder, you won't necessarily feel that as much. And it certainly won't be as easy to adjust for. So as I'm scraping, there's times where I feel, oh, it's not catching. I'll scooch over a little bit. I'll put my flex and my pressure toward the end as opposed to the dead center. So that might just be a style thing. I don't really know for sure, but I feel like a holder for me would be a little bit limiting. I need to move around. I need some flexibility.
Let's see. Let's see. I had some other questions.
Yeah, sure. Anything, by the way, doesn't have to be a question about scrapers, but
I have some other questions.
Cool. The remainder of the guild meeting can be about anything and everything you have a question about.
Curved scrapers. Which burnisher works better?
Well, curved is a different discussion because it's curved.
Yeah.
I got a gooseneck down here. There's all kinds of different approaches. I generally, with these guys, I just do the best I can to copy what I'm doing with my regular square scrapers. So I'm drawing out the edge, and then I'm going like this, and a lot of times doing it in my hand. Or if I'm in a vise, I'm constantly rotating it around, trying to reach the different facets of this thing. It's not that easy. I think I actually, maybe even an old guild meeting, pretty sure this isn't on the free site, how to sharpen a gooseneck scraper. I'm pretty sure it's a guild video.
Is it a guild video?
I don't know, but someone can check.
No, it's a free site video.
You sure?
I'm pretty sure because
Okay.
I saw it.
Either way, I have done a video on that.
I think it was a live. Maybe
I think it was a live.
Yeah.
But it's not, there's no tricks to it. It's the same principle. You just have to be able to do whatever you were doing before. Now you're just doing it on a curve.
Yeah.
Like I said, this one I think is going to adapt quite well to curves.
Yep, here it is. How to sharpen a gooseneck scraper.
On the regular site,
On the regular site from 2015.
Okay. The Veritas one, I just don't see that one working as well because you can't even really see exactly where the burnishing rod is. So how do you judge when to make the turn? Don't think that's going to work.
You mentioned the Stanley number 80 cabinet scraper.
Yes.
Robert says, do you not bother using your Stanley number 8 cabinet scrapers that you have on the wall
I do.
anymore?
I do. I, sometimes if it's a big surface, a big tabletop surface, those are going to be less fatiguing. You can make them a little bit more aggressive. The blade, the burr on it actually holds up a little bit better. These guys actually have what's more like a plain blade in there versus, card scraper stock. It's a lot thicker. So just the motion of holding this, pushing this way, your fingers aren't going to get as tired. These are the tools I use for larger flat surfaces. You do have to be careful with these because if they're not sharpened just right and tuned up just right, you can get a chatter on the surface. So if you're using them for a finish pass on something like a big tabletop, got to be careful that it's like really well tuned and sharp, because otherwise you get that chatter. Now you've got to clean up the chatter, and that always sucks.
Suzanne says, I really don't get it. What's so complicated about using a traditional burnisher?
What's complicated is you're dealing with two important things: pressure and angle, right? So a lot of people just have, I'm with you in a sense, because I don't have a problem with it. I've done it for years freehand with a burnisher. But for some people, I think it's a mounting thing. They've tried it, it didn't work. Then they tried it again and it doesn't work. And it becomes this thing that I cannot get my scrapers to produce shavings. And I think it gets a little bit overblown in terms of how difficult it is to do. But there's one thing critically wrong, at least one thing critically wrong with their process. Maybe their pressure is right, but the angle is off. Maybe the angle is right, but the pressure is off. Maybe they're doing the angle and the pressure right, but they didn't hone the edge properly. So they're just wasting their time, right? So there's really three important components that all have to be in play. So what these are gonna do is at least take one of those things off the menu. It's making it so that you don't have to worry about the angle. You still have to make it a nice honed 90-degree corner, and you have to apply the proper amount of pressure, right? But at least you've reduced your variables by one. So that's the benefit, but I agree. I don't think it's that difficult, but look, as popular as scraper sharpening videos, the reason why every YouTuber has one is because they watch them. It's like a shop tour video, right? It's gonna get views. So I don't know what the great mystery is, but it does seem to be a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah. Sean, I think you might have already done this one. Card scraper versus cabinet scraper versus spoke shave. How do you choose which to use when?
Okay, well, take the spoke shave out of that conversation. Your cabinet scraper and your card scraper are more or less just finished surface preparation type tools. So let's say, for the hybrid woodworker, it's a board that's just come out of the planer, has a little bit of like a ribbed surface in it. You could use either a card scraper or a cabinet scraper to level that out so you don't have to sand. If you have these really well tuned, and especially, you got a nice perfect new edge on there, even the real thin ones are good for this. You're doing that last, like a lot of people don't want to sand at all, right? So if you have a nice thin scraper with a good sharp burr on there, you just take your last pass with that guy and you're going to microplane the surface just before finishing. And you don't even have to sand, right? So I see the scrapers being more finish prep. You're not really doing a lot of stock removal, okay? Spoke shave, different beast. Spoke shave is a modified plane. It's more like a hand plane. So you're going to use these for interior curves, exterior curves, so convex and concave, and you're actually slicing through material, removing a lot of stock. The only thing these have in common, really, is that they look similar, but they're very, very different tools.
Okay. Morgan wants to know, what would you use a gooseneck scraper for? Is it like curved work, right?
Curved. Anything curved.
Like chairs.
Yeah, anything with an interior concave.
Yeah, like
concave curve. So when I did my Maloof rocker, I used the heck out of these. I had like 3 of them and was sharpening and honing them constantly to get on the inside of that scoop for the little butt scoop.
Oh yeah, the butt scoop.
Yeah, anytime you've got an interior dished surface like that, something like this is going to be really helpful. Also, there's times around, like if you're removing finish, a straight scraper is going to work fine too. But if you really want to dig in and like harshly remove material, almost like a scrub plane in a way, you could use a gooseneck scraper, and that little bit of curvature lets you really dig in quite a bit. So, but you don't use them that often, but they're just handy to have.
Gary wants to know, can I use my kitchen knife sharpening rod as a traditional burnisher?
I don't know. Didn't we answer something similar to that earlier?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the composition of those. My guess is if it's smooth, right? As long as there's no texture to it, you see it's very shiny.
Yeah, those are shiny, but the knives are usually textured.
Well, they're usually like, they've got a ribbed pattern in them, right? Yeah. So I wouldn't recommend it until you do a little more research on it. And I don't know off the top of my head.
Joshua says, do you have to flatten the face of the scraper before honing the edge?
Not necessarily. You can do either one first. They both have to be done. It's kind of like, do you flatten the back or work the bevel first? Most people will flatten the back first. Scrapers are interesting in that you don't necessarily have to flatten the whole thing. You can see the wear pattern on mine, obviously I'm focusing on the outside edge when I'm doing when I'm honing on the flat, right? So you don't even necessarily need to do that. If you have those little diamond sticks that they use for like sharpening bits and stuff like that. So basically it's just a little plastic stick with a diamond coated plate on it. You could actually use that to, hone the flat here. You don't necessarily have to get this entire thing perfectly flat. And sometimes it's actually, especially on thinner ones, can be difficult to do just because of the nature of the metal wanting to flex and stuff like that. But either way, typically I'm probably gonna take the scraper right away to my little block, put it on the stone, and start going after that edge. Because after the first few passes on a stone, if I hold it up and look at it and I'm like, I'm still way off, then I'm gonna go to the file. I'm gonna get a file, square it off first, and then go back to my stones. Once I feel like I have a decent flat surface, then I'll start working the flat. Great thing about that is, just like chisels and blades, once you flatten the back, you don't have to really do that again anytime soon, at least not on anything but a higher grit. Kind of the same thing with your scrapers. You don't really, as long as you're not doing crazy stuff with it, it should be a long time before you have to take that thing back to a file. Usually just to your lower grit stone, rework it, get the old burr off of there, work your way up through the grits, and then re-roll the burr.
Tyler said, recommendations for those who are new to scrapers. Do not use your scraper to remove stickers off of surfaces. Ask me how I know. Leaves a horrible residue from the glue and balled up paper, hard to remove.
Yeah, anytime you use these on sticky things, sticky stuff gets caught in that hook. I mean, this literally is, I was gonna actually ask you to bring Play-Doh, because I was gonna show what happens and I totally spaced on that. But you've got this scraper, the hook is actually a piece of metal that's out on the edge like this.
It's like a little hooky.
It's a hook, right? So it's a little piece of steel. So if you scrape something sticky and gooey, it'll get stuck in there, and then you're scraping it off and damaging if you have nothing else to use and you have to use your scraper, that's fine, but ideally, keep it away from the sticky stuff.
Chris says, anyone know the flavor of steel used for scrapers? Is it tool steel or something like a 36? I could always cut various radius out as I need them. Isn't yours a blue steel?
It's called, it might be in our thing. I call these my blue steel beauties. I don't know what kind of steel it is. I'm just a woodworker. If you look at JT's posts, or I think ours says what it is.
It says
super hard steel.
Super.
No, that's the Burnisher.
Oh,
that's super hard steel.
Okay. Card scraper.
Nicole's gonna look it up. What do we know?
I don't know.
We just sell it.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was like a blue.
It is. It's called blue steel.
Hard carbine 50C.
Carbon steel 50C Rockwell.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question? You know the Rockwell hardness?
Blue steel.
But it is, well, it's not blue after you hone it.
Yeah, it's true.
Then it's blue and silver.
Alex had a question, and he said, when using a scraper to even out two slightly uneven surfaces like a cabinet door joint, do you scrape from high to low or low to high, or both?
Maybe a little bit of both. Kind of depends, because if you're talking about a joint, there's a cross grain situation. So it's not just high and low, right? You've got grain running this way and grain running this way. So depending on which one's high, obviously you're not going to want to do anything that's going to cause tear out. So a lot of times I kind of split the difference and go on a bit of an angle, but it would depend on which one's high.
Yeah.
I vary it up, and as long as you're not pushing too hard or going like right across the grain, you shouldn't have any worries with tear out, but you're probably going to need to change it up a little bit. If I have a lot to remove, I'll probably start on the high side to reduce the height a little bit, and then my final passes will be coming from the low side, almost like a plane, so that it's going on that surface, and anything higher than that surface gets cleaned away with the scraper. So that's probably how I'd handle it. Knock down the high stuff first, and then come in from the low side.
All right, so I'm going to move away from questions. Well, somebody did say, which one are you going to use? What are you going to use? You're going to use...
I'm going to use them both.
Oh, you're going to use them both?
Yeah. I'm going to use them both because my initial reaction is this one is going to work better for me, personally, with our scrapers.
Okay.
This one, I'm not giving up hope on. I feel like I need to put more time in with it. I don't want to say that my initial results are reflective of how it's going to continue to perform. I just have to get to know it better. But it's going to take a little bit more effort.
But for someone that is used to using a burnisher, you like this one.
Yes. But for someone who is not, I feel like this is going to be it's at least going to give you a serviceable edge. Like when I got an edge over there, it was okay. I know I can get better. Someone who hasn't ever made a shaving with a scraper will look at that and go, hey, this is the greatest thing ever, you know, and then they can improve over time. So I think I could do better. I just need to get used to this guy. And I think if I can get used to it, I probably would use this more because it's just so easy to use.
Yeah, you just click it in and go. Alex, at the beginning of the show, asked, are there any new guild pre-orders expected to be out soon? I want to bundle up pre-orders with the Hank chair, but not too interested in the current other pre-orders.
I don't know when the next one's coming. I have to look at my notes. They will always come sort of just rolled out over time.
Well, usually one comes when one ends.
Approximately, yeah. And there's usually not, I can't say never because I might screw up at some point. There will almost never be a situation where you wanted to get a bundle and that project went out of pre-order before 2 new ones came in for you to get the big discount, right? You should always be able to get the big discount. If there's a project in that lineup that you don't like and that makes it more difficult, that I can't control. But if you're looking at what's currently available, you should be able to. So we'll get something in there soon. But we just recently added the under cabinet workbench, right? Was it the last one we did?
I think that was the last one for the workbench.
It's getting tricky, man, because we're like, I'm gonna have to start looking at 2020.
I remember when.
I remember back in the day
when all you could pick were Mark's projects.
Oh yeah, Mark's stupid projects was all that was there. Daryl, I believe, is going to come back in 2020. He wanted to take, not my decision, he wanted to take 2019 off, not just from the guild,
you know, we really,
from other things.
We should reach out to David and see what his schedule looks like this year. That'd be cool.
Yeah. I do have a conversation happening with, should I say?
Sure.
Anyone on Instagram, you follow Philip Morley Furniture?
I don't. But you sent me his stuff.
Yeah. It's good. He's real good.
Yeah.
You should expect to see something from him soon.
Josh Jones, not a scraper question. When resawing, do you use the fence or draw a line and follow it?
Hold on a second. Let me address this. I really wish you'd reach out to William Eng. Okay. Let me give you a little backstory. William is a good friend.
Yeah.
I've taught at his school, and he's a great guy. I have been trying for years, before I even brought Cremona into the fold, have tried to convince William to do a project in the guild. And he was convinced that if he did that, it would cannibalize sales for his school. Now, since then, he has done a lot more online. He has done his YouTube thing. We aren't in touch. I mean, there's nothing wrong there. We just haven't had a reason to correspond. And he's kind of doing his own thing at this point. So I'm not going to say that that opportunity is gone, you know, but I had tried many times in the past, and he kind of knows that there was like an open invitation. So as far as I'm concerned, if William wanted to do something in the guild, I would do it in a heartbeat. But he's, oh, my little thingy opened. But especially now that he's kind of got his own thing going, he might have a strategy in place, and the guild might not fit that strategy.
Make him an offer he can't refuse.
I just want to make sure when someone says, I wish you would, it's like, if you only knew how hard I tried. I sat in an Outback Steakhouse with him over a bloomin' onion and was like, William, here's what we need to do. He's like, okay. And then it didn't happen. So, wait, is Outback the ones that make bloomin' onions?
Yes, it is.
It was probably not even that. It was probably like a Vietnamese restaurant. But anyway, you get the point. That's what happened.
You took me to the Outback.
Took you to the Outback and gave you that bloomin' onion. So romantic.
All right. So Josh's question about the resawing.
What was it again? I'm sorry, I got so distracted with the William thing.
Do you use the fence or draw a line and follow it?
It kind of depends on the piece. If it's a real, if I'm doing veneer, I'm not going to follow a line for veneer most times. I'm going to set the fence up, make sure everything is perfect, and just kind of peel off my cuts. If I'm doing like a 8-quarter board and I want to saw it in half, I'm probably just going to follow the line. Usually I'm pretty good at doing that. And it's a larger piece, so it's a little bit more unruly. I follow the line in that instance.
You could seduce him with a bloomin' onion. That man doesn't want to play.
There you go. There's someone who understands the power of a bloomin' onion.
Troy did say that I guess William just moved into a new shop and created a dedicated video room. So.
He's been doing stuff with, he's been focusing on video, for sure.
So Jim said...
Here's the other thing about William. William is of an entrepreneur mindset.
Yeah.
He's a doer.
Yep.
In the sense of he wants control.
He wants to do it.
So at this point, he may have zero interest in what the guild can offer him because he has his own vision of where things are going to go.
Yep. Somebody, Jim, said, I would love to see Mark's face if Norm ever approached him to do a guild project. That would be bananas. Impossible. It would never happen. You know what would happen?
I would go, I just pooped my pants. Like that. Tom has a good thing. He says, what about someone like Peter Galbert for Windsor Chairs? I talked to Peter, well, Tom, I think you were at that show as well, back east, Fine Woodworking show last year. I talked to Peter then, and I said, dude, let's do something. The thing is, Peter's a super busy guy. So let me tell you what happens. It's you guys actually have a little bit more power in this situation, than you realize. When I tell Peter, hey man, let's get together, let's do a project, you'll make some money, lots of people will love it, it'll be great. He says, okay, sure, internet guy, I believe you, right? And I mean, he may trust me, but ultimately, he doesn't know how big the guild is. He doesn't know how many people in the guild would love to see a guild treatment of one of his builds.
Sure.
So I can only bug people so much. I'm not that aggressive with this stuff. To me, a guild instructor, someone coming into the guild, is an opportunity. Just in terms of how the business runs, compared to someone, let's say, doing a video project with Fine Woodworking or Popular Woodworking. I know what those deals yield, and I know what a guild project yields. It is an opportunity in every sense of the word for someone to be able to teach in the guild. So I actually, I'm not gonna chase people that much. I will give them opportunities, but if they're not that interested, then we're not gonna go any further with it. So I probably will reach out to Peter one more time. He's a super busy dude. He's got a very busy teaching schedule and a building schedule. So him working this in is a little bit tricky, but I'm not gonna chase him. I'm not gonna bug him. If he wants it, it would be there for him, because Peter is fantastic. Peter is on a different level than most people when it comes to instruction, and his chairs are fantastic.
Foxhall Woodworks just said, "Hey Nicole, did Mark answer my YouTube project question? I don't know what that is. Is that something you sent him? YouTube project?
I don't know what he's talking about.
Okay. I don't know what you're talking about. Email, maybe.
We don't know. We just work here.
Ed Worthy Effort says, "Have you ever considered Frank Straza? He might be in a situation that really benefit both. I don't know who Frank is."
I'm going to be honest with you there, Sean. I don't know. I've heard the name, but I don't know who Frank Straza is.
Well, there you go.
Is he a guitar maker?
Maybe.
It sounds like a guitar maker.
Yeah. I have some more questions over here. Charles Samuel says, "Mark, do you think you could use your finish over Osmo? I wanted to use that technique to smooth out my sideboard top, mineral spirits and mineral oil, maybe?"
You know, Osmo, it's a hard wax oil. It is going to dry to a film, but it is a weird wax film. You can finish the finish in the sense of abrading the surface so that it's smooth to the touch. You cannot finish the finish in the sense of making it shiny with that product. So yeah, I mean, after it's, you know, completely done, you could probably hit the surface. I wouldn't use anything too nasty. I don't even know that I would touch it with mineral spirits. I might just use water with a little bit of dish soap in there as a lubricant, and use that to just kind of use a, you know, 2,000 grit or 1,000 grit abrasive pad or something like that, and just kind of rub the surface down a little bit. I think you can get away with that.
Foxhall Woodwork said, "Mark said on Instagram that I could document my guild project on YouTube. can I post a link on the TWW Guild Facebook for said guild project? What kind of documentation?
Well, I think he asked
Okay.
me. He asked permission if he
Okay.
could. I said as long as you aren't teaching people
Right,
how to
right.
build it the way I taught it and sharing plans, it's okay. Yeah, don't overdo it. It's not something we want you to link to all the time.
So the rules for posting videos in the guild group and in the community, ideally, you say, here's what I made, a picture. And if you want to see how it went together, link is in the comments.
Andy said, I'm not going to repeat that, Andy. That was funny, though. I'm not repeating that because I don't want it to be a permanent thing in video. But you made me laugh.
See, Jeff says, can I leave a battery, DeWalt in this case, on the charger for days/weeks, or will that ruin the battery?
You know, most batteries have a,
Shelf
chargers have a turn-off feature, right, when it reaches full charge. But general consensus is that you never want to leave a battery in the charger for safety reasons. You know, screw the battery itself. It's whether this thing is going to burn your house down.
Yeah.
So I would still recommend, even with modern day chargers and all of the features that they have for safety, it's just generally a good idea never to leave them plugged in unattended. And I think most people in the chat would probably agree with that. But again, they usually do have a feature that cuts the power when it reaches full charge so that it won't, you know, constantly trickle charge into it, which I guess could shorten the life. But let's just say it's probably not a good idea just in general.
Not just
Any
tools,
battery, anything.
anything that is.
I get nervous just leaving like an iPad plugged in, you know, on the bed or something
Right.
like that. You know,
Yeah. Yep.
that might be a little bit paranoid, but I think most people agree with me. Just unplug the stuff, just to be safe.
Let's see. Aaron Olson, who helped us with our health insurance.
Well, thank you, Aaron.
Yes, thank you. He asked when he could get the card scrapers, and I told him right now.
Yeah, they're available
They're
now.
available.
And they, the people who already pre-ordered them, if you don't have them already, they should be there very, very
Yep.
soon.
Very, very soon.
Safety schmafety.
Okay.
What else we got?
It's past 7.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah,
well,
we've
let's
been
wrap
going
it up.
We've been going for an hour plus.
Holy
I think.
smokes.
So I think the site has kind of resolved itself because I've been
Oh, good.
bebopping around.
Hopefully John fixed
Yeah,
it, or it
well,
fixed itself.
It got
Error
massive
establishing database.
That is
That's weird. That's
no,
old.
that's not weird. That
That's-
is I can't go anymore. I got too many people on the site. So
I think we had some leftover connections and baggage from the pre-sale because the
Yeah.
site's been a little bit slow.
yeah, maybe.
So I don't know.
Eh.
Whatever. John will fix it.
We'll talk to John
John's
about
got
it.
our back. It's fine. Our friend up north. All right, anything else? Am I going to Maker Central? No. I'm not going to any non-essential
Yeah.
woodworking
We don't
event
know
this
about
year.
AWFS.
And I'm
yet.
definitely not going to be able to go to England to
Yeah.
a woodworking show.
I'd love to go to England, but
Yeah, my brother lives there. I mean,
Yeah.
it would be fun if it's, you know, at some point when we're ready to leave the kids or
Yeah.
take them with us.
oh,
Both of
Austin.
those ideas suck.
Austin, this was his first guild meeting.
Hey, Austin, welcome. I wish I wasn't so nasally for you. Yeah, this is a bad head cold this time around, huh?
I don't know. I don't feel bad. I just am congested.
It's just, it's hard for me to talk
yeah.
too.
You're like a couple days behind me on that.
Yeah. Anything else?
I think that was it.
Anybody? People just talking smack? You know the usual.
Yeah. An instructor group challenge? No.
Oh,
Probably not.
an instructor group challenge. Each instructor gets one part of it. You know what? Here's the thing: the people who are in the guild as instructors ain't got no time for that
No,
stuff.
they
Like,
don't.
I'm just trying to get Jory to have a free week,
Yep.
so I could get there to film for him.
Yep.
Like, it's difficult. Most of these people are working pros. Ashley, I can't nail her down for 5 seconds to give me a voiceover because she's flying here and she's going there and teaching here and do it. Like, these are really working pros who probably don't have time for funsies.
Funsies.
They got time for the munsies, but not time for the funsies. All right, anything else?
Yep. I think that's about it. Thank you.
I still want to start. I keep saying this all the time. I want to redo interviews. I want to do more interviews, especially with new instructors.
We just need to get it. You know what? I will book.
No, don't do it. See, you're gonna force me.
I'm gonna force you to do it because I'll make it. I'll put it on the calendar and make it happen.
Hate that.
I'm gonna make it happen.
Hate that. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody, and I guess we'll see you at some point in the future.
Yay.
Toodles.
Bye.